Well, I'm glad that folks are here. Whoever's here, I'm glad you're here. For those of you who aren't here, I'm sorry they're not here because we were hoping that we would get a chance to do some things, including a friend of ours who actually turned us on to this, and that's Justin Hamman, part of a duo. Justin and Jacob are brothers who really created a whole care situation for their mom, who had very young onset dementia and very somewhat unique symptoms. And so one of the things that they were looking around for is how to be supportive, how to be helpful. And the way they went into it is, what did their mom always love doing? And so what kinds of things do they want to try to sustain for her? And this is as their dad is still working, trying to keep working, and they're deciding how they're going to do this. And they're young men in 20s, and they're deciding, okay, what are we going to do with our lives that we're going? And they said, we're going to put some things on hold and we're going to figure out how to do this. And these are two guys of a bigger family, but they decided they really wanted to figure out how to help mom live. And so one of the things that they did is they were very big into computers and games and stuff like that. And so one of the things they did very early on is get together and put together a nonprofit that really looked at how can we keep mom going? How can we keep her engaging? Because one of the things that was pretty powerful about their mom's changes is that she lost language pretty early in her dementia. And she lost the ability to figure things out. However, she was still really good at movement stuff. And she was still really skillful at being able to do some physical stuff. But she couldn't figure out how and when to do the physical stuff. And so one of the things they started doing is creating things that would encourage her to interact by using sort of a system that people now see as, oh yeah, which was virtual reality. So they actually used goggles, and they had a exercise bike that they set up, and they started figuring out how to create gloves, and they started to have her do things as she rode the bike. It would take her places. It would encourage her to engage with a dog that was along the way. And as they were doing all this, they started to speak. They went to different places, and they started then to speak to, in fact, communities. And at that time, they're in Arizona, by the way, Phoenix area, out in that area. And so at that time, I went out to do a talk as one of several talks. It was a series. I went out to do a talk for Shelley, who's somebody who coordinates things, very active. And I was there, and we connected up, and they said, oh, you're the kind of thing we're looking for our mom. We need to build some skills. We need some different ways of trying to do stuff, because what we're doing isn't, some of it's working really well, but some of it's not. Oh, Justin, cool. So Justin, I'm hoping you can come on up. I don't know if I can bring you on stage, but I sure wish I could. I don't know if I can do it. I don't seem to have a lot of power here. Oh, look, you have power. Hey. Oh, you're real quiet. I hope you can be louder. No, we still can't hear you, or at least I can't. Can other people hear him?
Nope, I can't yet, but while you're working on it.
I think
yes.
Hello, everybody. How are you all doing?
I'm better for you being here. I was a little concerned. I couldn't seem to get you to, I was like, where's Justin? I hope he's here soon.
I'm sorry. Yeah, I was in one of the panels.
No, it's all good. I know that feeling. I was too. And then I decided to get over here because you were in the brain panel. I saw you, but the healthy brain panel, right. Taking care of your brain. Yeah. And I thought, well, I better take care of my brain and my stress and come over here and double check things.
I'm always doing that as well. Yeah, I was in here earlier, so I figured I'd check back in.
Cool. So
Jacob,
I was telling them a little bit about your story. And so I feel like I have to backtrack a little bit because I was talking about you without you. And that's not usually well mannered, but I did want them to hear how we got connected because you're the reason we're here. And it is that when your mom developed dementia and she lost language fairly early on, and she had really some challenges figuring out what to do next. However, she was still really good at physical stuff, but she wasn't necessarily doing a lot of physical stuff without a lot of support. So you guys came up, and I indicated you guys came up with this device that allowed her to be very physically active. And and I presented at a conference, and like, we were like, wow, I was really wowed by your stuff. And then you were excited by what we had to offer at Positive Approach. So tell us a little more about, and I described it as Justin and Jacob, a team, but that there were other family and your dad was still working, and, you know, your mom was really young. I mean, younger than me.
Yeah, you did
Tell us
a
more.
great job of introing into all of that. And it seemed organic how we kind of met at the event in Phoenix. But in truth, Jacob and I came across your information on YouTube a long time ago, and it was kind of a pursuit of, you know, getting in touch with you and learning more from you, because, you know, you were the most helpful resource that we came across while we were trying to help mom and figure out how to best, you know, understand and manage the Alzheimer's that she was facing. And yeah, so I'm the youngest. I have 3 siblings. My mom was, let's see, she was 58 when she was diagnosed with early onset Alzheimer's. And my whole family has been
Jacob, do you want to jump up as well if you have that skill to leap on stage, sort of like we did in Phoenix? Just leap on up there if you want to, or you could be quiet if you want to stay in the background. Jacob had a lot of night shift work, so he may be, you know, more in that night shift phenomenon.
Yeah, Jake, if you just step on stage at the bottom of the screen.
Or you can stay there. So, you know, we're not pushing you. Well, I always am, but not in a harsh way. So go ahead, Justin, and tell us a tiny bit more about that background piece, because you found us before I found you at that conference where you were demonstrating this bike and the gloves and the balloons and the dog, and I got all excited and was.
Yeah, so just the nature of who Jacob and I are, you know, we were dealing with this challenge and this struggle with mom, and you know, her newfound difficulties with the things in her life that she had always been able to do. And Jacob and I were grasping at any solutions that we could find. We were looking into, you know, different healthy lifestyle changes. That's kind of why I was in the brain health panel previously. And among some of those interventions that are beneficial for brain health that we were really looking at were emphasizing physical and mental exercise. And we were finding that it was really hard for us to help mom exercise and stay engaged with activities. And, you know, this brain training that we were being recommended was only available on laptops or tablets or your phone. And that was something that with mom's dementia and kind of those devices being foreign to her, it just wasn't achievable. So Jacob had a background in design and studying virtual reality. And we started to try to incorporate a lot of alternative therapeutics into kind of a safe space, if you will, within virtual reality. And we created a concept where we would have mom sit on a exercise bike and do a variety of brain training activities. And throughout the duration, she'd be listening to her favorite music, the Beatles. And there was a puppy who also represented our in real life dog Champ that kind of helped add some foundation and I think just anchor in the virtual experience. But yeah, that was something that we shared with Teepa, and I think it's built on a lot of the understandings that we have from Teepa's trainings and the positive approach to care in general.
Ooh, and so, yeah, so Justin is like sharing out this thing like that had to have taken a lot of effort, a lot of energy, a lot of rethinking and rejigging to get where you were. So it's not that this isn't hard work, because it is. But the cool part is when you put some hard work in, you can put a lot of work in and get nowhere, or you can put work in and change things. And so this idea of what can we choose to do as people in support of someone living with dementia that can make a difference for both of us in a more positive way. Wishing and wanting and regretting and losing, that's one way to go, but we believe that there are other ways to go. So, oh, hey, Justin, I'm wondering, near you, have you got something to drink? Anything?
Yes, I can absolutely find you something to drink.
Oh, that would be fantastic.
Would you like water or would you like tea?
Oh, look at
Water
that.
or tea?
Oh my heavens, look at that. He's been at this for a little bit. So what Justin is showing you is when I indicate a need, like say I'm just grasping a cup and I know what I want, but I don't know how to ask for what I want. And I'm just here. And if you try to take the cup out of my hand, no. And it feels like I'm being resistive to Care, which is one of our favorite friends. She's so resistive. She's so non-compliant. She gets so upset. And it's like, I'm trying to communicate, but unfortunately my method of communication has changed and my interaction skill has changed dramatically. So he had to take what and I was actually queuing him up with, oh, hey, Justin. So I had use of his name. I knew who he was. But if that's not the case, Justin and Jacob have to be the ones to modify, because I'm giving you the best I have, which is I noticed you were human. I thought you might be helpful to me. I thought you might be friendly. And I came up with did see it? And now you guys have got to figure out. So, Mom, did you want something to drink? Is not necessarily going to be helpful because it's language based. And one of the realities for many, many people living with dementia is language is one of those real problematic areas in the brain. The ability to find the vocabulary word, to articulate it, the ability to comprehend it. However, the ability to pick up on visual data, I picked up the mug and I'm holding on to it because it means something in this moment to me. This is a thing that I'm going to try to communicate with. The tricky part is you guys have to recognize, boy, she's using visual cues to communicate and she's holding on to it. It must represent a need of some sort. So rather than trying to get the cup out of my hand, going and getting something and putting it in the cup and saying, ooh, and then getting your own cup and going, cheers, and beginning to drink uses the parts of her brain that have a better chance of interacting at that moment in time. But that doesn't mean that's going to stay that way, which is also frustrating because what works at one point in the day may not at all work 15 minutes later or later that day or for sure in a month. And so it's a constant state of brain changing that we're required to do if we're going to keep up with their brain changes, because their brain changes are not consistent. They're not static and they're not stable. So the whole idea of talking about stages or levels, it's not logical. It doesn't even make sense. So this is where Jacob really comes into it, because we have a different way of looking at change over time. And so we look at things like, you could be in a state of mind. All of us are in a state of mind and it can vary. And so if we recognize where someone is in that moment, then we can figure out how to be supportive in that moment, keeping in mind what can they do and what can't they do in that moment. So if I'm here and now I don't know what to do, and when you go cheers, I just stand there. Then we need another technique. I go, this one isn't going to be enough. Because if you try to force the cup up, I try to push the cup away, and you try to push the cup in. I try to push the cup away. What do we label it again, Justin? What's our favorite word there? What do we like to call it? She's being
difficult.
She's being difficult. We love we love to talk about how people living with dementia are being difficult rather than people living with dementia are having a really difficult time trying to figure things out, do things, understand things, appreciate things. It's not because they're not trying, but our cue to them of pushing it toward them, they may simply think that we're pushing and they're going to push back. And it's a simple motor activity. Not that you're trying to help me drink something that, frankly, what did I pour in there? Water? Shit, I can't even see there's anything in there, let alone that understand that that's what I'm supposed to do with it at this point to quench a thirst. So it's like incredibly tricky.
But Teepa, I've been caregiving for 8 hours already today, and I don't have the energy to.
Oh, yeah. This tricky part about we want our brain to be on, and we want to be on, and we want to do great hour after hour after hour. But when you're chasing a brain or trying to support a brain that's really different, the first brain you need to take a look at frequently is the one in the mirror. And you got to go, okay, where am I right now? Am I in a place where I can do this, or am I getting rigid and inflexible, or am I so sensory overloaded? If I hear her say if she does that one more time, oh my God, if I can't, I just want to sit down for 5 minutes. Why won't she sit down? She just keeps moving. She's going to fall. All that emotional stress and distress that we get into, what do you think? Healthy, unhealthy for your brain? What'd you guys talk about in that brain thing? I bet you any money that might have come up. Sleep, yeah. So knowing your limits is so, so important, and having backup plans so that you have somebody else and you can say, I need a timeout. I need a break. I just can't do this right now. And knowing that someone else can be there. But the hardest thing is admitting, my brain isn't in a good place right now. Could you help me out? And I think that's where our biggest flaw frequently is being unable or unwilling. And I think it's unable to look in the mirror at yourself right that minute. Just because I'm busy already. I'm looking out there. I'm trying to do this thing. So we've come up with some techniques for that too. And it's called hand under hand assist. And the reason we do it is because it used the natural tendency of a human hand. So I'll just ask you guys out there, how many of you use the palm of your hands and the fingertips a lot more than you use the back of your hands to do things? Think about it for a second. What do you do with the back of your hands? Shoo, leave me alone. What do you do with the palm of your hands and the fingertips? Classically, that's pretty much how you get stuff done. So if that's the case, now let's look at your hand and realize the hand is a complicated process here. And you have different nerves going to different parts. So if you were to take and run a line between your ring finger and your middle finger straight down your palm, what you would want to think about is these three fingers work together. That's called, these three, median nerve. There's a nerve that actually runs from there up through here, all the way up to here. And so it allows you to have skill in your hands. And so these three fingers make your hand very, very skillful. They're also called your manipulators because it allows you to manipulate things, to do things with expertise. So using a pen, buttoning a button, zipping a zipper, even flipping a lid, twisting a lid, those kind of things. If it's on hard though, I'm gonna pull in these two fingers, which is the ulnar nerve, and that allows my hand to be strong and powerful. And the thing we know about all dementias is that they will rob you of skill before they take away your strength. And so you will still be strong, but you'll lose the skill of being able to do a lot of things with your fingers. And so if I know that about hands, it's also true about feet. It's true about eyes. It's true about mouths. It's true about balance and coordination things. And so as we figure this stuff out, it's just how brains work. Then we can start to figure out how do we support someone. And so the way of supporting someone is to only fill in the missing pieces, not to overwhelm them with takeover, because that's often what causes people to get frustrated with us, but it also will wear us out. And knowing that ability really is based on what do I need and what can you do? So if I start, and I'm going to go ahead and do it because it's so distressing when it happens. And Justin and Jacob, you may want to turn your volume down because I know you're familiar with this sometimes. Help, 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 please help me, please, please, please help, help, help. And you come. And what's our first reaction when somebody is yelling for help and we come there? What do you think our first natural human reaction is? What do we do? Justin, what do we do?
What is it? What can I do? What?
Help me, help me, help me, help, help.
I don't know. What do you want?
Guess how close Justin will get? Really close, because, yeah, and guess what I will do with my very strong hands? Grab him, and then I will help him. And you're like, I don't know what you need. And that is really, really honest frustration. And it's legit. It's really, really legit. Because in my effort to use the part of my brain that still works, the part of my brain that still works is a very primitive part called the amygdala, which feels threatened. And here comes help. And I'm expecting you to know how to help me. And yet I don't even know what's wrong, actually. All I know is something ain't right. Something isn't right. And when you ask me questions, when you get really close, I grab, because that's a skill I have. I mean, it's just strength, but boy, it's present. So how can we find more pleasure and joy? And the answer is becoming more skillful. So when I'm going, help, help, the first thing we have to do is come in with help. You need help. You want help. And we want to turn our bodies a little sideways, and we want to get down so we'll stay in visual range, but we also have to be thoughtful to not get in too close at first unless we're feeling okay. If the person is able to move, then I want to go ahead and get my hand under hand. I want to get that hand clasp, because I know that hands are a way of connecting, and I'd rather have a connection that's this positive physical connection than one that becomes scary or frustrating, or once they get hold of me, then it feels like I don't want to be with them by trying to disconnect. So there's more to it than that, though. And we don't have time to get into all that. But I do want to point out there can be incredible amounts of pleasure and joy for moments. And those are moments. You don't get to have like a whole wad of it, but you can have moments of it. So Justin, I'm curious as to whether or not you can share your screen. I was not able to. So, but I'm curious if you can get yours to share.
I believe I can.
Okay, give it a shot. Look at you.
Okay, can we all see?
We can. Yeah.
Okay. So is this what you were looking for, Teepa?
Yeah. And so what Justin is about to share with you is a preserved area of brain for many, many people who live with dementia, and it's called that rhythm section. And we often talk about it with music, but what we don't always think about, it's also dance and movement. That's this automatic movement that I'm not thinking, what's the next step? It's embedded in my memories of what's that next step. So what we're going to take a look at, I'm hoping, is that Justin will be able to share with us work that he had someone doing with his mom.
We have to change science.
So y'all can see some of the magic that's happening here. So now what I'm really curious, Justin, do you have a video about the same time with your mom trying to eat or trying to move around in the house without that kind of thing? Because if you can find one of those moments, that would be really powerful, because it's this comparison phenomena. And it's to really recognize, wow, we see people as so unable, and yet sometimes it's just we're not looking in the right window at the right moment to see where the possibilities are. Because when I went out to visit, she and I had a great time dancing and exercising and getting on the floor and getting back up. But we couldn't have much of a conversation. But we did have some great moments of interaction. So this idea of playing to someone's strengths and acknowledging the areas where they don't have that support, but knowing I need to bring somebody in who knows how to engage with these things. And this is this tricky part of like, how do we get to this place where people are going to be able to have the skill and the ability they need or know where to get help? Because this isn't for everybody. You know, these kind of skills that we're talking about, it's just really not for everybody. So that's an important thing to recognize. I can't do computer programming very well. That's why we have people like Jacob who can make an app and make the app work and all that stuff. And all I do is go on and say, here's the password they said to give you, Jacob, because that's all I can do. And even that took quite a bit of effort to figure out how to get Apple to let you do what you needed to do. So, oh, here we go. So this is the same woman you just saw dancing. You just saw her dancing and fluidly moving. So. Real time.
Brilliant, just brilliant. You ready? Let me help you.
No.
No, I'm not done yet. You. Okay, there. Is that bad? Scoop. There you go. That's my lady.
So I'll go ahead and pause for a second, Jacob and Justin, because I'd love for you two to talk about during that, because that was a phase that your mom was, I mean, that was a period of time. And that was how long ago do you say? Ooh, now.
Well, the last year gets lost sometimes, but that was probably a little over a year ago.
I would say that's more like 2.5 years ago.
Yeah, it had to be closer to 3 because of COVID. And I was out I think I came to visit you guys sort of not too long before COVID. And that was some of the stuff that was sort of then. And so this time, what Justin did, which is really common, his hippocampus, which is the learning and memory center, keeps up with the passage of time and helps you get from place to place. When things are rough, your brain can frequently crush time or expand time, and it's been forever, or it's not been very long, and it's like, wait, how could you think that? And you just saw 2 different time awarenesses, and that is super common when you're doing this care support stuff, because your brain can just get overwhelmed with time. How much time? People living with dementia experience it all the time. I haven't had anything to eat. You just ate. I already ate. No, you didn't. It's been 2 days since you actually eat. I mean, how long has it been since you showered? I just took one. No, you didn't. When did I last go to the bathroom? I just went. No, you did not. And it starts to feel like an argument instead of a brain failure on one part and a brain that wants somebody to recognize something on the other part. So for you guys, during that time, what were some really positive, powerful things? And what were some of the really hard parts of that disconnect between what she could do in certain moments and then what happened when she couldn't do those things? Go ahead, you guys talk about it, because you were up close and with it 24, and I mean 24/7, because your mom needed to have eyes on 24/7 and guidance 24/7 frequently, because she had an inconsistent sleep cycle that was like nobody's business, and distress state that would come on very, very quickly when her body and her brain couldn't figure out how to work with each other in any appreciable way. And it got really hard because it was hard to find medical support that was offering what you really needed for a lot of that. So either one of you start. I just want you to sort of share out a little. Yeah.
Go ahead and lead, Jake.
Yeah, I mean, there's so many difficulties on so many different levels. I think one of the biggest parts was that we did not have like a proper care structure. So it was mostly Justin and myself trying to navigate through the situation as mom was changing and trying to come to terms with what we're supposed to do to help her best. I mean, that video of her dancing was a good example of something that I think we did right. We figured out that she could use rhythm and that she was happy and she had positive, useful activity where she could get physical activity, because that was always one of our big ambitions, was to help her maintain a healthy lifestyle, even though she didn't want to. She didn't want to become motivated to do any sort of exercise. She didn't want to eat healthy. She wanted to do the opposite of those things. And so our goal was to help her kind of maintain a healthy lifestyle, but also to maintain a happy demeanor and happy outlook. And I think that, and I'm sorry, I came a little late, so I didn't get to introduce myself. So maybe I can just interject right at this moment, but my name is Jacob, and I've been helping along with Justin to care for my mom for the past now 5+ years. And so we've been on this journey with her for a long time and have seen kind of every stage of this disease. And around the time that these videos are, like maybe 2-3 years ago, we were experiencing a lot of like crazy stuff with mom. She was having grand mal seizures, and a lot of the stuff that we kind of were not informed about up front by the medical professionals. We're having to figure this stuff out on the fly. And thankfully, Teepa was helping us kind of give advice and give some kind of tips about how we can approach mom in the best ways. And like Teepa was saying about mom's ability to maintain rhythm, I think a huge factor in terms of why we have looked to what Teepa teaches and why we think it's such a kind of a strong approach is that she starts off by helping you to understand what parts of the brain are being affected, and that gives you some sort of foundation of basis to say, okay, as opposed to just hearing, hey, you know, your mom can't see well, she's not going to be able to hear well. Okay, that's one thing to hear that, but once you get grasp, okay, so the hippocampi is the thing that's, you know, being degraded, or the temporal lobes are something that are affecting the language, and she can't really hear the consonants, and it's hard for her to process these words. When you can understand the parts of the brain that are being affected, then you can your reaction to what's happening to mom is I think more directed, and you can actually have a bit more compassion. You can tell, like, okay, her brain is dying. That is why she cannot, you know, speak to me, and this is why she cannot use her hands. This is why her depth perception is not functioning. And you can see the video where she was eating. That was one of the biggest problems, was like, sure, she couldn't figure out, or she couldn't see the spoon and the food getting to her mouth properly. The depth perception wasn't there. And so on one hand, you could just hear, yeah, well, she can't eat well. But if you really kind of dig down to the more ground truth and understand, okay, her occipital lobe is being damaged, and therefore her wiring of the eyeballs and the way that the retina processes information, it can't work. And so then you can approach the situation differently. You have a better basis for how you can go about trying to care for her. So that's like fundamentally one of the biggest, I think, features or like reasons why like Teepa's program is really effective, and more so, I mean, many more reasons, but that's just like the basis point. And so when we were going through this stuff, like your question, Teepa, about what were some of like the hardest parts, and really it's just the fact the seizures that would occur, that is a mystery of science. Nobody still, like, even the top doctors, Alzheimer's doctors, they cannot give like their explanation of why that stuff is happening. Is it something that might be a complication due to a medication? Is it just purely the brain is having a malfunction? And so I think that we were attempting to try to resolve these things on our own and try to figure out, okay, well, the doctors can't tell us any information. We got to try to research this on our own and figure it out. But then you also have to just basically accept that this is the case. Like the brain is changing. We can't really fix it, and we have to be able to live with mom and help her to live her best life, given all of the kind of knowledge that we have. And so that led us to do certain things, and that led us to interact with her in a certain way. And I mean, one example of like You know, just this isn't even like a very not a specific example, more of a global example. Is just the visual field, understanding the fact that she now has, say, tunnel vision or binocular vision. Even as now the disease has progressed, we can position ourselves in front of her in a way, knowing, okay, if I'm trying to hand this thing to mom, her depth of field is not functioning properly. I'm going to have to either hold her hand and help her grab it properly, or you know, you can't pop around on the side of her, and she's not going to see you. And a lot of this stuff is just small, like details, but it helps you throughout the course of a day, how you can interact with her and keep the scale from tipping. It always feels like a very fine line. You're walking a tightrope, like just one wrong step here, and we really cascade down the hill. And if you can make the little tiny maneuvers and tiny adjustments as you go through it, then you're going to be able to keep her in a positive state. And, you know, being able to have that base knowledge, it's really empowering. It's something that gives you the ability to have the smile, to have the connection. And it's not necessarily like, okay, it's just the dancing. That's an activity that we do. It's more about, can I connect with her on an emotional level and have her be comfortable, feel safe, and then I can get her to laugh. I can say a little thing that she'll think is funny. I know that can happen, but it's not possible if she's in this distress state. So really the goal is trying to keep her in a non-distress state so that you can do many other things, including dancing, including music, which those have long been, you know, her passions and some of the things that have been really powerful and impactful. But it's really about, you know, just maintaining that level of kind of homeostasis, or trying to avoid the falling off the cliff.
Yeah, the peaks and the troughs, but keep the waves sort of gentle. So someone had asked in the chat about using music during eating, and you guys certainly played with that, tried that, but the challenge is it's an other stimulus. Instead of, in that moment, her brain was working as hard as it possibly could, trying to take something from the plate and get it into her mouth, and adding another thing in wasn't really something that was going to be really beneficial in that moment, because you guys tried some stuff, but that didn't help her eat at that point in time, because she really needed everything she had to try to take something from that plate and bring it in. And feeding her would rob her of some of that hand to mouth ability that was sustaining her, you know, because that was really important for her to have that, and I'm going to use the word control, because your mom was somebody who she was very friendly, but she loves to be in control of stuff. I mean, it's just part of her being, not in a mean way, but many of us like to be in control of stuff. And it's just really vital that we, you know, keep that one in mind, because it is a challenge. So I know your dad had different points of pain and different points of connection and different challenges. And I know each of you did, but I also know it was different when you guys were up close and personal and you have family members out of the area. And this is a very common scenario, and that approach to care. How do you bring people in who aren't routinely there every day? And so they may pop in very episodically. And for many people who are living with dementia and their families, friends, sort of, it's like, what happened to the people around her and around us? And where is everybody? And you realize, gosh, boy, people have melted away. It's sort of like this, you know, you had a snowstorm and now everybody's gone except for a few folks. And it can feel really lonely and isolated and overwhelming. And it can also feel, and it's one of the real challenges of having someone young living with a dementia, and particularly whether it's Alzheimer's, whether it's Lewy body, and there's so many different kinds. And that's also sort of important, because a lot of the things Jacob's and Justin's mom would display looked more like Lewy body in many ways than it ever looked like Alzheimer's. when, you know, there would be episodes of, oh my heavens, couldn't sleep, couldn't sleep, couldn't sleep, couldn't sleep. And that's not that consistent with Alzheimer's, but super consistent with Lewy body. Falls, but mobility other times. So, you know, you look at some of these things and say, okay, well, if it's not a diagnosis, but it's a symptom, what do we do with it? How could we work with it? Because, you know, a diagnosis is one thing, daily life is a whole nother thing. How do we see if we can get this stuff to work? So, Justin, I know for you, you guys picked what times of day you would spend the most amount of time with your mom around where some of your personal life cycle stuff was a better matchup. And I think that's something families don't classically think of, but we encourage people to think about circadian rhythm. And it turns out different people have different patterns. And yes, you know, you can tend towards something, but it's really, I think, important as care partners to realize you got to respect yourself. And if your better time is a certain time, try to figure out how to fit that in. But don't then, this is Teepa saying, we know better, but it's hard to do better. Don't try to jam everything else in those other hours so that you can be there for that, but you still got to do all this stuff. And recognize, you know, humans are only meant to carry so much for so long. And then things start to break apart and break down. So respecting what each of us needs to stay whole and to stay well, that's, you know, that's a real critical phenomena. So Justin, what was one of, you know, what were some of your times that you were at your best that helped you also then do better in that? And then just, Jacob, I'll ask you the same thing, just because I think people, it's really important to recognize where our strengths are and where we're not maybe so good to be.
Yeah, I mean, you know, for me, I think the morning hours and the early afternoon were best for me. And in those settings, it was more of a one-on-one with just mom and I, less distractions, less outside noise and other things that made it difficult to have that connection. And then alternatively, I think, you know, Jacob has an answer of later on in the day.
Yeah. So for Jacob, how about you?
So yeah, at this stage where we were switching kind of portions of the day, I mean, it's evolved, right? So earlier on, we were taking an entire day each, and we've kind of split up a week, and then as things became more challenging, where basically mom needed care throughout the night as well, then we necessarily had to shift to like taking portions of the day. And so, I mean, I have, I think, generally been more of a night owl, and I ended up adopting the night shift with mom. And it was like an incredibly difficult period of time where she wasn't sleeping throughout the night more than, say, an hour, 2 hours at a time. And she would wake up, she would need assistance, and just fundamentally, she needed someone to be there. And at that point in time, like, again, we didn't really have like a proper care structure in place for various reasons, including financially. But that was the shift in the role that I had, you know, chosen, I guess you could say, but, you know, basically adopted. And I think that as far as the other point about people coming into the house and sort of, and the way that, you know, someone that's not accustomed to how you interact with mom and deal with mom is you know, we would try to create some sort of preface. We would try to give a little super brief, you know, synopsis. Here's what works for mom, and here's kind of the best way to interact with her. And one of the, you know, biggest factors was noise and kind of like, I guess, confusion or too much action. And it's something that my sister, she has a family with, you know, 4 little kids, and she would like to come over and see mom and have them all kind of be a part of typical family functions. But from our perspective, like, that's really not great. It makes things so much harder, and it makes mom enter into this really agitated state. And so we would have to kind of give that a preface, like, look, we can have these types of family gatherings. It's different now. We have to make sure everyone's quiet. We can have things that are a little bit more one-on-one with mom to try to interact with her. But having a lot of ambient noise in the room going around, it just, I think, again, it goes back to understanding the way that the brain is able to process information, and it's it makes it go even more haywire when there's too much like volume and activity going on. So
cool. So you guys have been like super, super responsive and super helpful to let us sort of take a look at all this stuff. So now we have a few questions that people are sending in, and we want to respond to those. I also wanted to like share a couple of slides because the guys have talked about how vital it is to sort of be able to actually see brains a little bit. So I'm going to see, it says I can, I'm going to see if it does actually allow me to share. So are you seeing a picture of a PET scan here?
yes.
Okay, cool. All right. Phew. All right. And are you also seeing lots of color coding and words and all kinds of funny stuff? I'm sure.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. All right. So what we're looking at, and I'm going to simplify it and just share out with you guys, what you're looking at are actually, I'll go back to the more complicated one, then I'll take you to the easy one. These are 4 different brains. And so we're looking at 4 human beings. These people are alive, they're alert, they're awake, they're lying in a machine, and we're taking pictures of their brain. And we're looking at how well the brain is burning fuel. Right? We're looking at how well is the brain burning fuel. And we're looking at a slice of the brain. We're looking at a sort of from front to back at a slight diagonal. So this with the white circle around it is your prefrontal cortex, the front of your brain. And then we have the sides, like the temple areas, which is where your auditory processing takes place. And then we have sensory motor. This is the strip of brain tissue that allows your body and your brain to talk to one another for sensation and movement. And then back here in the back, this is the part of your brain that allows you to see stuff and understand what you're seeing. Your eyes take it in, your brain processes it. And so that's called the occipital area back there, that bright green color circling it. And that bright red means, whoa, a lot of activity going on while you're lying in this machine. These areas right here are called the amygdalae. These are the part of your brain that's called the threat perceiver, the pleasure seeker, the needs meter. And these little areas right here, these little guys right in here, those are your hippocampal areas, learning, memory, wayfinding. And what we then see is that the second brain, if we look at the second brain in all those areas, what are some of the things you notice right away if you look at red is high activity, yellow is sort of mid, and blue is low, and then the purple means there's not any activity. Those are open areas in your brain where you have fluid. So if you see it that way, then what do you notice just between the idea of a normal older brain and someone who's having early loss dementia? You're just early in the loss of dementia. As soon as you look at that, what does your brain tell you when you look at that? In other words, use your occipital in your thinking. And I ask you that question. What are people noticing out there? And Jacob or Justin, if you notice anything in the chat, feel free to chime in here. Give you guys a few seconds.
Teepa, I'm noticing change.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, the amygdala is looking to be larger. The hippocampus is looking to be smaller, and generally less activity.
Yeah, less activity. So we see that there's some change in vision. It's still pretty red, but this threat perceiver and pleasure seeker, and I need my needs met, and I need them met now, is more powerful and more active. My ability to learn and remember things and to find things and to engage in a way that I used to engage and hold on to stuff in a way that makes sense. And my ability to be thoughtful and to control my impulses is sort of not as great. And then with late loss, we see it a lot more purple, a little bit of blue. And people look at this often and go, wow, there's nothing there. And it's like, yeah, it is. It's light blue, which means I'm going to need a lot of support, except there's red back here, which you heard Justin and Jacob talking a lot about mom's visual shifts. And this is sensory motor lying in a machine, which means if you're not giving her a whole lot to do and not engaging her, you're not going to get much going on here because you have to move and feel, but it's being impaired for sure. The amygdala is still sort of hot, but the learning and memory and wayfinding and stuff really, really lacking. But this is a normal, healthy child, and you'll see similarities and some differences for sure. But if we take a look without the circles, so I'm going to take off the circles so you can just get a better look at those brains. We compare early to late. What's going to help early on is not going to help late. We're going to need some different kinds of abilities because those two brains are dramatically different. And so this is over time, we're going to have to keep working on things. Now, what I want to point out here, somebody asked about bathing. So if I don't like the feel of things because how things are feeling and how things are coming into my brain is getting more concerning, and water comes from above and you can't really see water very well because it's clear and it's just hitting me and I don't like it and I don't want this. And so what we find frequently for people who are living with dementia, bathing becomes, and showering for sure, but bathing in general becomes something that is challenging. And so it's difficult because the brain's ability to handle information and to get the idea of what we're trying to do, even if it's uncomfortable, and appreciate that nobody's doing it to be mean. Nobody's doing it to be ornery, and getting out of your clothes in front of another person, even that can be a little overwhelming. But then you think of air and water and skin and towels, and it's just a lot. And so being willing to think in baby bites, little bites, and be willing to think in ways of, okay, so how can we hit the high spots? And the high spots are where you build up sweat and you have anaerobic bacteria building up. And so we want to think about that, but then when you think about it carefully, your brain goes, and those are the most intimate areas on a human body. So that human being is probably not going, oh, fantastic, you're going to touch me in intimate places. Wait a minute, nobody touches me there but me, or my lover, or somebody who I want to have a relationship with. And so that's another place where using hand under hand. And if somebody will not take your hand to do it, that moment where you go, okay, and they don't want me involved, no matter what I do. And it's like, yeah. So we got to reach a middle ground here. And if I get you believing that I'm going to do something you don't like, no matter what you do, suddenly I don't know if I want to be with you. I don't know if I can trust you. I don't know that I really want more. I want you to quit. I want you to stop. No. And a human reaction really, is to pull your arms in tight, pull your legs in tight, and get ready to use whatever skill you have left. Spitting, biting, pinching, punching. And that's where people get a reputation, quote unquote, for being aggressive. And what I would say is, they're not being difficult. This is incredibly difficult for them to try to tolerate, when I've never had anybody do something like that to me in my life. Or if I have, whoa, that was a really awful time and period. And so that history that I never shared with anybody because it was mine and mine alone, now might actually be something that's interfering. And that makes it really hard because it's a thing from the past that's very real or imagined. I was always fearful of that. I was always very private or not. And you might have the other thing where I'm walking around naked because I'm not really concerned about my body anymore. I'm not really tuned into it. And people are offended, but you know, I'm trying to take care of business here. And so this, to ask a family to take this on with almost no preparation, I say, how dare we as a society? How dare we ask people to try to understand an ever-changing brain without some support, without some preparation, without some support along the way? I just think we do everyone a disservice by making assumptions about people. And yet I will say, yeah, I can typically get people to do stuff, but sometimes I can't. And I have to be willing to really care more about a relationship frequently than about getting something done in that moment. and be willing to come back to it and maybe come back to it and let's try somebody else. Let's try a different place. Let's try a different intensity. Let's try this differently. And so the comment we've made is sometimes you just got to let it go. And that can seem like not okay, but I'm going to tell you, you know, you got to make choices sometimes. How much do you want to have somebody on a medication that makes them unable to respond to you, to life, to a situation? And how much can we titrate that, modify that, you know, manage that so it doesn't take the person away from their world and the life entirely, but it does allow them to engage and interact. And just like everything else in dementia, it's going to be a constantly moving target. And it's so hard because it's like when you get something, you want it to go, yes. And you know what? So we got it. How many times did you guys think you had it? I'm just curious. How many times did you have it?
Yeah,
For
I mean,
for 5 days, for 3 days.
yeah. As soon as you think you have something, the situation changes, and then you're back on your heels. And I think we're almost out of time, so I just want to real quickly say, like, this topic is caregiving hacks and tips, and right now we're not able to cover nearly, and and barely scratching the surface with what Teepa offers. But for us, like, genuinely having gone through this process, like not knowing anything, getting thrown into this fire of helping care for our mom, like Teepa and the positive approach to care is the biggest hack. It is the tip. Like go to her website, watch her videos, like understand the teachings in a way that is going to help you become a better caregiver. And also download the app on the App Store, search for Teepa, and it helps you with like little day-to-day tips about how you can do things with your best of your ability. So we are super grateful for Teepa and everything that she has been teaching, and I really highly recommend everyone that is a caregiver or knows someone that is living with dementia to check it out.
And check out in the chat, I think Christine just shared, Teepa has been on TikTok, and I think that is one of the better outlets that I've seen you on, Teepa. That's been amazing.
And who would think somebody like me would be on TikTok? But indeed, what we've been amazed at is the response, which the number of people who are hurting so badly, and we can try to sort of help people that way because it's a quick fix, but sometimes that's what you need is a little quick fix. How do I do this? This hack, the real quick recommendation. So I thought we'd finish up. What I would do is I'm going to try to share a video clip of me with dementia, which I don't, as far as we know, but here's the deal. None of us know. None of us really know what's going to happen down the road. So I'm going to give you a scenario here where I'm not early in the condition. And the question I have for everybody is, can you find some moments for joy? Because without joy, this journey is just devastating. So let's give it a try. Let's see if you have audio. I'm hoping this works. Let me know, guys.
Hey, Teepa.
Hey. Hey, Danny.
Hey.
Yeah. We here?
Teepa, here.
Yeah. Oh.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I have a place for him right there.
There.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Look at that.
You do that?
I see that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And that goes here.
You got a blue one.
And that one. That goes.
On the other green one.
Yeah.
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 Mm-hmm. Teepa,
Yeah.
something to drink?
What? Yeah. Okay. Oh, hey.
Hey.
This here, see it?
Yeah, I see.
Yeah.
They're
These-
cool, aren't they?
Oh, those go.
Those go
there
Those go there.
because that's 1,
Mm-hmm.
2,
2,
3,
3,
and 4.
4.
See that?
See,
And this
That
is
goes-
this is
that
there.
goes there.
Yeah.
Teepa. Let's get something to drink.
You gonna get it?
Drink. Got right here.
Oh,
Yeah.
Oh, that's a drink.
That's a drink.
I got it.
You got it?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Thank you.
You got it.
That's okay.
That's okay.
So now this, you can put that in there.
You can do that.
You see that?
Yeah, look at that.
And then you can put that there.
Yeah,
See it?
I see it.
And now you've got a
Yeah.
martini.
Yeah.
There you go. So, what did we find out? You know, it's all what you do with the moments. And it's the moments. And then how do you get through the rest? So we are going to head back, I believe, because I think it's about that time that we have to go back. We don't have to, but it's about time to go back to the main room. And I want to thank everybody who came and everybody who's listening in and everybody who's out there for doing what you're doing. But if we can be of any help whatsoever, please let us know, because we're here to serve, because that's our mission. So thank you guys so much for sharing as much as you do. You guys are remarkable human beings, and I so appreciate you being in our life. And thanks to everyone here for being in the world. So thanks.
Thank you all, and thank you, Teepa.
My pleasure.
How are you?
So we're supposed to head back, everybody. Don't get lost. Oh, that would be hippocampal. So I'm hoping you can push the right buttons. You know, this does make it a little easier. Leave room, leave things. Yeah, cool.
Thank you.